everybody, welcome to another edition of Fraud Fighters Unplugged. I'm honored today to be joined by Sam Nickpay from Arcos Labs. Sam is an enterprise executive here focused on our large accounts and brings a huge amount of enterprise experience and domain expertise into the conversation. So, Sam, very quickly, say hi to the folks. I'll do some housekeeping and we'll get into it.
Hey, folks. Thanks so much for having me on today.
Yeah, for everybody, as always, please DM either through LinkedIn or directly to Arcos Labs, either me or Sam. If you have questions, we will endeavor to follow up within a few days. And by all means, feel free to do that. Sometimes, if there's time at the end of the episode, I'll deal with questions from the prior episode, and we can engage that way. But Sam, really interesting and awesome times we're facing right now with all of the turmoil, things going online, and we just lived this last week of another major hack, probably the biggest hack ever, of proprietary information, social security numbers, IP addresses, emails, the whole deal. National Public Records, what was it, 3 billion records, some crazy thing like that. And so it got me thinking about the reality that in any identity workflow, we're really trying to answer two questions. Is Frank really Frank, and is Frank behaving normally in the context of this transaction? And I guess the theme today is, hey, what happens when you don't know? What happens if whatever you've put in place doesn't get you to a position where you can resolve that question? Is Frank Frank? Does Frank belong here? Is he somebody else or some bad actor? Maybe let's start there on your views of what are the implications to the individual and the enterprise when you get to the position of not knowing who's on the front end of a transaction?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the hardest things that companies are dealing with today because, one, as you mentioned, one of the largest breaches of personal information has just happened in the last week. And if it wasn't bad enough for the previous ones that have been happening for years at this point, it's really easy to look like John Smith, even if you're not actually John Smith these days. So it's becoming harder and harder to know, even if they have all the right information, that you actually have to apply even a greater level of scrutiny. But on the flip side of that, you have to be able to enable the business at the same time, because you can't get in the way of them being able to onboard new customers, interact with regular customers. And, with competition at its highest amongst all these different brands, you don't have to get in your car, drive 3 miles down the road. You're 3 clicks away to everyone's competitor now. So being able to make that determination confidently from a data-driven standpoint, while also being able to validate in some ways, has become even more critical, because extreme goods and extreme bads, super easy. But that gray area in the middle has only gotten bigger and bigger over the last few years.
Yeah, think of this, Sam. It's so true. So I come to a workflow, whatever platform you're using, whatever workflow information and data you're using to resolve that, to answer that question. Let's say you don't get there. You don't know if Frank is Frank. Now you're left with two really bad choices, to your point. Choice number one, I just don't allow Frank to come in. And Frank gets aggravated and goes, I'm going to your competitor. So I make the wrong choice on the front end of being too punitive, and I cede market share. And that individual, as you said, is just 3 quick clicks away from your competitor. Easy to do, easy to onboard. If I make a calculated risk and I go, I'm just going to let this unknown session through, this empty session or unknown identity through, I risk the reality of potentially allowing a bad actor into the environment. And that has all kinds of downstream consequences. It has obviously the fraud potential. This individual could come in and could take information. This volumetric attack with credential stuffing could prove the accounts and take over. I can introduce malware into the account or ransomware into the account. And there's all kinds of really difficult problems, and mitigating and solving for those problems can be very, very expensive. So you're kind of stuck in this no man's land of, on the one hand, transaction abandonment, ceding market share. On the other hand, the other side of the pendulum, I let somebody through, and now, I've got all kinds of brain damage associated with these people are in the environment, and who knows what they're doing, what did they steal, and so on and so forth. It's a real conundrum, and I think it speaks to your point of the reality of being data driven. I have to be able to understand as an enterprise in real time, am I dealing with the right kinds of information and systems and data to make that measured decision? Is Sam really Sam? And then equally importantly, once I determine if that's true, is Sam behaving normally? And that latter one's even more complicated with the advent of Gen AI, because everyone's talking about Gen AI about everything, but one thing that's undeniable is it makes interactions look more and more human and more authentic. And so, given your expertise in that, you're obviously our market leader in AI, and really that's a segment for you that's very, very strong, and you're well known in that. What do you see as the implications of, hey, it's not just Sam is the behavioral side of it, or is Sam emulating human behavior that looks pretty legitimate and would therefore trick systems and allow, a bad actor into the environment?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, and something that I've been really passionate about over the last 18 months. It started with ChatGPT coming out and kind of using it as, hey, let's see what we can do with it. How can I improve my workflow? But then you start to see kind of the ramifications that are happening. Like pig butchering is a huge issue that's happening. So, when people are on dating sites or on romance scams and things like that are happening, it's so difficult to know if you're talking to a real human because these LLM systems are so powerful. The other day, just out of just curiosity, I kind of said, I'm a Virginia Tech alumni. I went to school in Blacksburg, had a great 4 years there, and I put in there, I was like, hey, what are the most popular downtown locations? And not only did it just, anyone can look at a Google map or a Yelp and see stuff, but it called out some really specific things about each of the downtown bars that we would all frequent, like acronyms for the name of the bar, specialty drinks, things that you would only know if you went to school during the time period that I went to. Actually, even on top of that, I put in there, hey, what happened between Virginia Tech and Boston College in the football game in 2007? That's a game that I harbor a lot of resentment towards Matt Ryan for to this day. We'll put that for another conversation.
Those wounds run deep, Sam. Those wounds run deep.
They very deep, Frank. So it not only told me the outcome of the game, it told me what happened throughout the game. Maybe not a quarter by quarter or box score, but it gave enough details. I even typed in what was the weather that day, and it gave. I remember that day so vividly because of the weather as well. It gave me so many details. So when you think about someone, we've trained people historically. I think about my parents' generation. We train them, look for weird messages, look for weird links, misspellings, grammatical issues. Those are gone at this point. So simply interacting with someone on a dating site these days is a high-risk transaction in and of itself for a consumer, despite all the trainings that they've received up to this point, because of so many tools that are available within seconds of giving them that valid information.
Yeah, it's so interesting because on the one hand, Sam, we've trained people to look for the telltale signs of manipulation. Like you said, bad grammar, the thing does different domains, the email doesn't match. And what we've accustomed ourselves to is to rely on shared unknown references. So when someone says, hey, Sam, if they approach you online and go, hey, Sam, I was in your English literature class. I was at the game, that game we can't ever forget. And I remember the weather, it was hot. And, you begin to share kind of a reputational element where you lower your guard, and AI accelerates that. So now these unknown shared references that were previously known to a small group of people can be emulated. And really, if you think about pig butchering, for example, specifically in the romance scams, it starts with building profiles and building connections and building trust. And so what happens is I reel in the victim. How do I reel them in? They reel them in with those shared references. And that becomes super easy because, as you said, in the span of 10 minutes on a chat GPT, you were able to get enough information to build a credible profile, to tell a credible story that you would go, oh, you know about that bar? Very few people know about that bar. You know about that day, et cetera, et cetera. So exactly. I think you're right. I think it really does kind of accelerate the ability for nefarious, individuals to gather the information necessary to be able to perpetuate these kinds of real life, legitimate attacks based on references that would let your guard down. That's a scary thing.
It is. And not only that, Frank, I think in addition to just making it really easy to go after one person, now they can go after countless numbers of people, because before, if you were trying to do this, maybe you had to do a little bit of research. You could do it one-off. I could take anything into ChatGPT and get a result 30 seconds later because it's such a powerful system. So it's not even just about facilitating more fraud and scams to happen on an individual level, but it is magnifying and multiplying the scale that is out there.
Yeah, two things I'll leave everybody with as we wrap up, Sam, and it's been awesome. We could talk about this for hours. So, really appreciate your insights and counsel and wisdom on it. But if you think about it, ultimately, the mission of all of us that are fraud fighters really is to protect people as they transact through the digital economy. People online need to be protected. And when you think about that and the kind of, ethical imperative we have to protect people, and you think of the real consequences of not doing so, the romance scams, the lost money, the impact it has on people's lives, I think it's incumbent on all of us as we fight fraud to realize, one, the machines are out there. Machines are building machines to attack your business. The volumetric attacks are being supported by crime as a service ecosystems that provide people this data. They're fed this incessant breach data, which keeps them relevant and current. And the bad guys have adopted tools as an accelerant to be able to perpetuate these attacks. I think it's incumbent on all of us in this fight to realize we're protecting people. In order to protect people, we've got to use these systems to really understand how to be mitigants and countermeasures against what they're doing, and to really train people to understand, hey, what used to be legitimate needs to be again viewed with a degree of skepticism as you go through this thing. And then also as business leaders, incumbent on you and me to find that balance between when is it appropriate to introduce the right kinds of frictions in a workflow and when do we trust people. I think you obviously as our practice leader in AI are near and dear to this stuff. And I love that you mentioned the romance angle to it, because it's not just the e-commerce account takeover stuff. It literally permeates anything online activity, because these guys are very opportunistic as they follow the money. So Sam, it's been an honor speaking. Leave the team here with one last piece of advice and then we'll wrap up.
Trust nobody.
There you go. Coming from Sam Nickpay, our practice leader at Arcos Labs on not just on Gen AI, but across the spectrum of industries. Sam is as I said, a domain expert, a subject matter expert in the space, recognized as such across the industry. If you have any questions for Sam, you can find him on LinkedIn, DM him there. As always, DM me and I'll forward them on to Sam as well. And until our next edition, stay in the fight. We appreciate the effort all of you are doing in keeping people safe. And we'll look forward to the next one. Sam, thanks very much.
All right. Thank you, Frank. Take care.